I'm Adam Collins. I'm a film director from Nottingham. I was born and raised in Nottingham. Lived here my whole life until I joined the Marines. I did 6 years in the Royal Marines and then started training to be a stuntman. And from there worked in films and produced and directed my own movie.
So when you were in the Marines, was it always your intention to, I guess after you'd finished, go into film?
I've always wanted to do films ever since I was a kid. I remember watching Hollywood's Greatest Stunts with my dad every Saturday afternoon and said, one day that's what I want to do. And everyone just used to laugh at me saying that it was pipe dreams and all that kind of stuff. Just the silly things that kids always say. And I started training for the stunt register about the age of 18, and I just didn't have enough money to do the training. So my parents sat me down and said, right, you need to figure out what you want to do with your life, because this isn't going to happen this way. And the only thing that I'd ever wanted to do other than be in films was be in the Marines. So I started training, went for selection, and went through training and qualified in the Marines, and that's kind of where that took me.
So do you have any other, I guess, inspirations?
As I said, it's something that I've always wanted to do, and when I left the Marines, I went into private security. So I was going out to Somalia, protecting commercial vessels from pirate hijackings off the coast of Somalia. Even though that sounds like it could be quite exciting, it's probably the most boring job I've ever done in my life. And the majority of the time, you're literally just sat waiting for the time to go by. And at that time, I was doing a lot of acting and being sent for auditions that I was just never going to get. Like, my agent would send me forward for castings that were just ridiculous. Like, I'd walk into a room, go into a casting in London. So I was pretty skint anyway, because all my money was going into stunt training. So every time I had an audition come up, it was kind of a big deal for me to go all the way down to London, use whatever kind of spare money I had left to go to these auditions. And I'd walk into a casting room and the room would just be full of maybe black guys. Like, every single guy in there was a black guy. And they were casting, like, the profile for the particular role was for a black actor. So it was ridiculous. Or, I'd go in and it was just full of old guys and everyone would be like in their 60s or over. So you can imagine how frustrating that can be as an actor, going into a casting, like learning your lines and preparing yourself as best you can for a particular role, and going into this audition and just being immediately being shut down, knowing that there's absolutely no way you're going to get this role because you just don't even fit the description at all. So with that frustration, I guess, I kind of decided that you can either keep going this way and being a part of thousands of other actors, and some of them a lot more trained and experienced than I was. You'd go for a casting, there'd be maybe 50, 60 people applying just for one role. So instead of kind of putting yourself in that part, I decided I could just sit down and maybe write my own film. And then I could choose the character that I wanted to play and that I wanted to perform, and help sort of develop my own craft and my own skills in acting that way. So with all this free time that I had when I was on the ships, I sat down watching loads of movies, back to back, watching films, just kind of pass the time. And that's when I decided to write the script. And I wrote the script for my first action feature. And I came home and I pitched it to a few people who I'd worked with previously on student projects and independent films. And they just kind of they were just like, mate, you just need to kind of forget this idea. It's ridiculous. Like, trying to make a feature film with no budget, no experience, it's a bit of a non-starter. And looking back, maybe I probably should have taken that advice, because it's taken me nearly 6 years to make the feature film, which I've now finished and is set to release this year. So it was a hell of a long journey, really, really, a real struggle. So for me, it was an opportunity to kind of act and perform in my own film with my own sort of creativity, which I could tailor to myself, really. Which was a great learning experience and something that I don't regret at all. It was very, very difficult, and it was a hell of a struggle to get through it. And there was a lot of times when I sat back and thought, shit, maybe I should do something else, maybe I should just shelf this and leave it, because it was difficult to take on such an ambitious project whilst maintaining a full-time job and, you know, earning enough money to sustain myself as well as sustain the film. So it wasn't easy by any means, but it was definitely worth it. And the learning curve from that, and the networking and the people that I met along the way who helped me throughout that endeavour was, you know, priceless. It was well worth the mission. So I'm glad we saw it through and we finished it.
Are there any people in particular that sort of inspired you to keep going, or anything that just motivated you? Because obviously you said it was rough.
Yeah, I think there's a few sort of aspects to kind of think about with that question. One of them is, you get people, no matter what you try and do, if you're trying to achieve something, if you're trying to accomplish something, you're always going to get people that are going to tell you you can't do it, or that you're going to fail. And I think it's really important to realise that no matter what your struggle is, whether it's filmmaking or business or whatever you try and do in your life, anything is achievable. Anything is. You just need to put the hard work in and make the sacrifices. And it's not about if something can happen, it's just how you're going to make it happen. And, you know, you're going to fail over and over again. And you just need to learn to pick yourself up and keep moving forward. Because the only time you ever really fail is when you accept failure as the reality, if that makes sense. So, you know, when you accept that you failed and that's it and you quit, that's the only time you really ever fail. So all the people, I guess, that doubted whether we would finish it and whether we would, you know, accomplish the things that we set out to do, they were a big motivation and a big inspiration for pushing forward and making sure that we saw it through. So I guess that's sort of my biggest sort of motivation behind it. But also, on another note, everyone that helped us, because we made the film with no budget, everyone that kind of, you know, grafted. We spent hours and hours on set, freezing cold, in, you know, terrible conditions at times. And people grafted, you know, people really put their hearts into helping us. And I felt that we owed it to them to make sure that we saw it through. And so I feel that we did the best we could to do it justice and show our appreciation and gratitude for the people that did help us.
So I guess referring back to the military,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that your time served sort of inspired the kind of films that you've made or want to make in the future?
Yeah, definitely. My life's always kind of been directed in that sort of that lifestyle and that kind of environment. So it's definitely inspired a lot of the films that I've made. I have a lot of friends in the military, and a lot of their stories and a lot of the things that I've experienced have given me material to write scripts and do the things that I've been doing.
Okay, and I guess in the future, what are your plans without, I guess, spoiling too much?
I've got a couple of things in the pipeline which are looking quite promising. I think for me personally, it's just to develop myself as a filmmaker and as a performer, and to just try and, as I say, try and help as many people as I possibly can, and at the same time try and make some cool shit, you know. So I'm looking forward to the next project which I've got a script in development at the minute. I'm hoping just to kind of get a bigger budget for the next one and just kind of keep building up in that way, and hopefully that everyone who's helped me out will want to come along and we'll just go on the ride together, you know. So that's the plan for the future, just keep making films.